Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Special welcome. Brad King and I were having a very spirited discussion about important Catholic literature. This is Maple Syrup episode number 265 and episode number 1 of our latest offering, Beauty, our Augustine's Beauty class. And our topic today, of course, as you can see now, watching this on YouTube later from the title, is on Hildegard of Bingen. From early childhood, long before she set out on her public mission or even professed monastic vows, Barb, hello, hello. Your presence made me break my sentence, and I've never been happier to break a sentence because you are so amazing. Welcome. We are talking about, it's so good to see you. We are talking about Hildegard of Bingen. Hildegard of Bingen, episode number 1 of our beauty class, episode 265 of Maple Syrup History Overall. From early childhood, long before she undertook a public mission or even her monastic vows, Hildegard had this deep awareness, this deep feel for what today we would call spirituality, I think in a very kind of like general societal sense, and what Catholics, of course, would say in a more fine-focused way, the presence of God in one's life. She talks about the umbra viventis lucis, which means the reflection of the living light. And she writes this letter late in her life, at the age of 77. She, of course, is at this point, perhaps you don't want to call her an elderly woman. She's not quite, she's not over 90, but certainly seasoned, abbess at this time for a long time. Looking back at the way that she would describe this daily presence of the reflection of the living light. Quote, from Hildegard of Bingen, age 77. From my early childhood, before my bones, nerves, and veins were fully strengthened, I have always seen this vision in my soul, even to the present time when I am more than 70 years old. In this vision, my soul, as God would have it, rises up high into the vault of heaven and into the changing sky and spreads itself out among different peoples, although they are far away from me in distant lands and places. And because I see them this way in my soul, I observe them in accord with the shifting of clouds and other created things. I do not hear them with my outward ears, nor do I perceive them by my thoughts, or my own heart, or by any combination of my 5 senses, but in my soul alone, while my outward eyes are open. So I have never fallen prey to ecstasy in the visions, but I see them wide awake day and night, and I am constantly fettered by sickness, and often in the grip of pain so intense that it threatens to kill me. But God has sustained me until now. The light which I see thus is not spatial, but is far, far brighter than a cloud which carries the sun. I can measure neither height nor length nor breadth in it, and I call it the reflection of the living light. And I'll continue on with this in a second. I'm going to pause there, so it's a longer quote. Hildegard of Bingen was born in 1098. She dies in 1179. So this is written, only 4 years before her death. The idea that kind of overt spirituality and people who talk about different kind of spiritual experiences and the kind of false stereotype that, well, in the old days, in what we call today the Middle Ages, the medieval period, people were very kind of close to the vest. They didn't go kind of abstract crazy, so to speak. And I say that with complete respect. I say it in a good way. I love abstract crazy, for the record. Is not true. She even is stopping short here of talking about spiritual ecstasy. When you talk about people like Catherine of Siena, John of the Cross, of course, famously, once you even peel back the first layer, you don't have to even go too deep. You see that there are a lot of people for a long time, a millennium deep period. This is not a modern revelation or a modern kind of phenomenon, willing to really plumb the depths of, if not overtly spiritual ecstasy, those types of like proximate adjacent experiences. And I'm especially thinking about, because in this course, right, we talked about, in the intro video, we're going to have there is no chronological frame for our beauty class this semester. It is not like past courses where we slowly march for World War I or the Civil War through battles in a kind of fixed chronology. Our 5th lecture is on Bo Jackson, the MLB and NFL player. The previous lecture before that is on Mozart. The lecture after Bo Jackson, number 6, is on Ernest Hemingway. I mean, it's kind of all over the place. The one theme being, and I encourage anyone online to go look at episode 0, the kind of introductory video I posted, is just looking at the concept of the transcendental beautiful, right? The good, the true, and the beautiful. And right off the bat, I'm going to continue more with this quote. Hildegard has what we call today kind of deep spiritual sensitivity. When we talk about spiritual experiences, sadly, in our modern, postmodern age, people often, especially secular people, will root that in a kind of LSD, Woodstock, beatnik generation, Jack Kerouac. Like I had all these spiritual experiences after I, drove a bus, a Sprinter van across the country, did a bunch of whatever, and it's like this is not a modern 1960s, again, beatnik type hippie experience. This kind of openness to an experience she says ever before her eyes, not even her dreams, but while her eyes are wide awake, is something that is important to get from her right off the bat. Hildegard of Bingen, pray for us, a saint, was very weird. And I say that in a very cool way. She's awesome. We'll talk about the whole class is dedicated to her, but it's the first thing I want to get off the bat. Yeah.
Hildegard of what?
Hildegard of Bingen, Bingen. Or if you von Bingen. You read my mind. I was gonna say Hildegard von Bingen. Von Bingen sounds way more noble.
Yeah.
Anybody can be of. Of is stupid, but von is legit. I'm sorry. Wait. I'm sorry, Hildegard of Bingen. You are not on the list for this thing. Excuse me, will you please check under Hildegard von Bingen? Right this way. Like von. Yes, von is awesome. Von is so noble. Okay. I can measure neither height nor length nor breadth. Me repeating now where I ended. I call it, quote, the reflection of the living light. And as the sun, the moon, and the stars appear in water, so writings, sermons, virtues, and certain human actions take form for me and gleam. Final time that I'll say this. Hildegard of Bingen was weird in the best way. By weird, I mean like etymologically correct, different. She saw the world differently. And I'm arguing here in a most beautiful way. Her weirdness was a holy weirdness. It's too bad what a bad rap the word weird gets today. Weird means, it's just always negative, right? Oh, I don't want that guy, on my team. He's a weirdo. Like he can't be on the project. Like it means someone who doesn't get the job done, who beats the march of their own drum in a bad way, right? It's a weird is negative. I'm saying Hildegard of Bingen was super weird in a super holy, very cool way. She saw the world differently, right? Writings and virtues are taking a form in front of her eyes. I can see the mathematics of this music type stuff. She had like kind of savant, visionary type quality. One more paragraph from Hildegard. Now, not me speaking, once more her, quote, but I, though I saw and heard these things, refused to write for a long time through doubt and bad opinion and the diversity of human words, not with stubbornness, but in the exercise of humility, until laid low by the scourge of God, I fell upon a bed of sickness. Then compelled at last by many illnesses and by the writings of a certain noble maiden of good conduct, and of that man whom I had secretly sought and found, as mentioned above, I set my hand to the writing. While I was doing it, I sensed, as I mentioned before, the deep profundity of spiritual exposition, and raising myself from illness by the strength I received, I brought this work to a close, though just barely in 10 years. And I spoke and I wrote these things not by the invention of my heart or that of any other person, but as by the secret mysteries of God, I heard and received them in heavenly places. And again, I heard a voice from heaven saying to me, quote, cry out, therefore, and write thus, end quote. Cry out, therefore, and write thus. She's saying God is commanding her to write these things. We'll talk about her major works in a second. Spoiler, anyone who doesn't know, what Hildegard is most famous for, it is unquestionably her music. Now, and I'm so grateful to all the supporters on YouTube and on the channel. As you know, on YouTube, I can't just like post other people's copyrighted music. So I encourage you to, I wish I could like interplay a bunch of her music into this episode, but suffice to say, and for all the maple syrup episodes, especially this beauty class, my goal is to introduce you to this stuff, talk about it in nice depth and detail, and then send you on your way. Go Google today, everyone, assignment, go Google Hildegard of Bingen, celestial compositions for music. That's what she's most famous for. But it's hilarious. We'll talk about this in a second. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. Her music is not discovered until many, many centuries after her death. Like people don't even know about her music until this guy puts on a concert in the late 1970s. And then all of a sudden, oh, wow, we discovered this treasure trove of her work. We're going to talk about that question in a second. But suffice to say, she's most famous for her music. That's not all she did. She was legit. I want to say, but I feel like it's disrespectful. Like, she's legit, my girl Hildegard. I feel like calling her my girl is probably like that's too, come on, that's too informal. Have some respect. She was an abbess, you know? But I really do like her a lot. She's super, super cool. Okay, let's talk about a little bit of her biography. Again, the dates are very, very important. She's born in 1098, 1098, and dies in 1179. So, I mean, except for 2 years, her entire life is spent in the 12th century. Let's do some mathematical rooting, some chronological framing. What else is going on in the world at this time? Anyone new to me? I guess I should say my name, probably, right? But people know me, right? Barb, I mean, like they see, like I know that guy. That's the guy from that thing. They know. My name is Groshin Krashevsky, and my specialty is my PhD is in history. I'm a historian, is in American history is a fine focus, but I'm a historian. So let me get to the real heart of my work as a historian and give you some history. Her living in the 12th century, she is a little bit before St. Francis of Assisi and St. Thomas Aquinas, their 13th century. Her being born in 1098, she's basically born when the First Crusade is called. First Crusade is called by Pope Urban II, I believe, in 1095 and goes through 1291. So she's born when the First Crusades break out. She is 24 years old during the first investiture crisis of 1122. And this idea of like church-state relations and the East-West Orthodox split of 1054. The Hildegard is born basically half a century after that, right? 44 years after that. Yes, but
A crusade to expel the Moors from Spain began in 1065.
but I mean the one
It goes to Jerusalem.
right.
Okay.
Because then we talk about the Spaniards and the Moors, all that comes to a head with the Reconquista and Ferdinand and Isabel and the 1400s. I mean I'm actually looking up right now. When does Pope Urban II call the Crusades?
Okay.
I mean for the Middle East, yeah.
All right.
But you're right. Actually, no, I was just talking about this recently. Like people don't understand. There's a reason why Spain is called the land of 1,000 crosses and 1,000 minarets. Islam and Christianity, and sometimes at its best, kind of cooperative, mutual respect versus fighting happens in Spain more so in the Middle East, as you said. Pope Urban, First Crusade. So I said 1095. Let me see. Yeah, 1095. In November 1095, Pope Urban II delivered a famous sermon at Council of Claremont. Okay. But okay, yeah, but 30 years earlier already, Christians and Muslims in Spain. So this is a kind of, and indeed the Battle of Tours of 732, Charles Martel, and fighting the Umayyad dynasty. Christians and Muslims have been, unfortunately, often at each other's throats for centuries by the time she is born once more in 1098. As Americans, we're always like, Protestant Reformation, right? Is a huge date, 1517. I mean, she's born, 4 centuries before this. She's born same amount of time basically before Christopher Columbus, 1492. This is a medieval woman with postmodern, she's so super cool. I've made that point yet, how cool I think she is. If you're like, why did you pick her first? Because she's a legend. It's like I said, she's my girl Hildegard. So we already talked about that.
Where was she?
In Bingen, in what is modern day, at this time, like the Holy Roman Empire, excuse me, from Charlemagne and being ended by Napoleon in 1806, the German Confederation, all these kind of Central European states, there is no modern Germany until 1871 as a state, but she's born in Germany for the purpose of, a modern cartographical framing on a modern map. She's German. Which means another feather in her cap. She probably loved purposely drawing out the O. If I was texting to be 5 O's, love beer, probably, right? Hildegard of Bingen. Get it, guys? You understand? Okay. Boo, yeah. Saint Hildegard, also known as the Sibyl of the Rhine. She's a German Benedictine abbess. She is a writer, composer, philosopher, visionary. She writes on medicine, practices medicine, all the while running this Benedictine abbey She is, please note, first super important point, a very typical Beau ideal polymath. This is why I love her. Polymath. In other words, a Renaissance man, a polymath, a person of multiple talents. And if you're like, when does the Renaissance start? She's way before that. Renaissance, the earliest you can talk about Renaissance, like 1300s. It's really 1400s, 1500s, Pico della Mirandola to the famous, Da Vinci, Michelangelo, etc. So she's way before them. She is a polymath. She is one of the best known composers of sacred music at this time. And also, this is hilarious. I say it's just interesting. She is considered by some to be the foundress of natural history in Germany. Kind of like a scientific, I guess you call her a founding mother, but founding father, kind of some natural history scientific thought in Germany. She's elected Mother Superior at the age of 38 in 1136 of her convent. She later on founds other monasteries at Rupertsberg in 1150 and Bingen in 1165. What is the Benedictine motto? Who remembers? It is so, so cool. What is the Benedictine motto? Exactly. Work and pray. Ora et labora. Hildegard does a lot of prayer. Obviously, she's a Benedictine abbess. And she does a lot of philosophical stuff, mystic visions, musical compositions, talking about the humors of the body and medicine. She also gets dirt under her fingernails, which I'll say why again. She's an amazing woman, my girl Hildegard. This woman is awesome, right? She loves beer, as we established. She loves football. I mean, now I'm just making stuff up, but she definitely probably liked beer. And despite the fact that she's so, you can say, this is probably the wrong word, but you understand what I mean, like white collar versus blue collar. Like she's a white collar. She's an abbess. So you think about intellectual position, philosophical position. She's an unbelievable philosopher, and in the very classic Greek sense of philosophia, as in what we consider philosophy and science, but also a musician. So very white collar, kind of not laborer stuff. No, she's also a laborer. She builds 2 monasteries. This woman is awesome. If she was around today, she would do everything she does and also running a construction company. She'd be on the work site with a hard hat. So yeah, take that, everybody. Whoever's all the haters about Hildegard of Bingen are really, really quiet right now. When they're like, wow, in addition to all the kind of cool stuff she did musically, spiritually, philosophically, she also was a builder, because Benedictines believe in that beautiful motto, which I'd love to. If I was ever gonna get a tattoo, I have 0 tattoos. But Father Mike Schmitz, anyone know who Father Mike Schmitz is? Everyone knows, right? The Ascension Press priest, everyone know who he is? Yes. Father Mike Schmitz is a priest on Ascension Presents. And yeah, I guess that's who he is. And he was like a runner-up for Batman or something. I'm dead serious. He was in the 80s. I am dead serious. I would tell you right now, I'm just joking. I'm not. He was a runner-up for the Batman role or to play Robin or something. And he talked about in his kind of testimony story that, of course, the providence of God, and it's great that I became a priest, etc. Father Mike Schmitz got a tattoo. So if he can do it, I don't have tattoos. If I ever get a tattoo, I'll get Ora et Labora tattooed on me. That's sweet, like prayer and work. Yeah, I love that motto. And so it's very important to realize that Hildegard of Bingen lives this. I don't know how to keep coming back to this one point, but this class being about beauty, the transcendental value of beauty, there is a highly interpretive lens of everything that I'll present to you. This is the first lecture of 30, will be what I think are beautiful aspects of a person's life. Hildegard of Bingen is beautiful because she's holy, by the grace of God, thank God. Her hard work as an abbess is beautiful, the kind of nuts and bolts building these things. Her music is terribly beautiful. Her scientific speculations, right? And then I want you to take that even further. And okay, well, what is that? How does that relate to the ultimate transcendental quality of beauty that leads to beauty itself, which is God, which belongs to God alone, right? At the end of the lecture, I'm going to have these kind of onboard points that are circled with a blue pen, where I talk about, these are my most important points that I believe relate to Hildegard. So am I doing it because, YouTube people say, save your really important points for last, because then people watch the whole video? That's absolutely why I'm doing it. So I'm not going to tell you to the end. You have to stay tuned. But at the end, every class, I'll have kind of on the board points that are recap and kind of highlight of important things. And if I haven't said it enough, the fact that you two guys are here, this is like, okay, normally, right? You guys are here, so that's +2. Other people show up, it's minuses. And it balanced out. Today it's +2 and 0. So all the good people are here today. I'm just kidding, guys. Everyone else who comes is awesome. You know who's bad? You know who's the only bad guy? This me right here. I'm the bad guy. Okay. So instead of trash talking other people, I should point the finger to myself. People who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. I'm the bad guy. Last basic point on Hildegard. She is canonized by Pope Benedict XVI on May 10th, 2012. He extends this liturgical cult of Hildegard to the entire Catholic Church in a process known as, quote, equivalent canonization. So I'm not even kidding. This is where I will always admit my ignorance. To everyone watching online, to everyone here in person, to everyone everywhere, truly may God help me. I never want to give you false information. I'll never tell you if I know something. I don't even completely understand this. It's like a person to be canonized has to have 2 miracles attributed to them. Opponents of the Catholic Church don't often realize how the Catholic Church always calls BS on people. If the church is not looking to canonize people, it's actually looking to do the opposite. When a person is up for canonization, they actually hire someone called the devil's advocate to trash that person, tell me why they're a charlatan and fake. It's a very hard process. So Holy Mother Church can assure that people that actually have the title saint are legit and not charlatans, once more. Because sadly, for often, one authentic saint, you have 10 fake bad guys, whatever. So the process of like formal canonization is a long, long process. It's like Hildegard, I think, has this kind of popular veneration, this popular devotion of like, she is so legendary, which I could not agree more. I love this woman, as I've said, too much now. But, we think she lived this holy life, but she wasn't formally canonized. She's so legendary that Benedict the 16th somehow extends, this might be a bad analogy, but the way someone gets an honorary doctorate. Like I have a real doctorate from Mississippi State University. I love Mississippi State, go Bulldogs. I earned my doctorate there. But what if USC wanted to give me an honorary doctorate? Well, that's not the same thing. I didn't earn my PhD from USC, but it's a title kind of, right? So I think it's a similar kind of thing. But maybe even more so, because it's called equivalent canonization. Canonization. That seems to mean that it's exactly legit. That same year, do you think Benedict liked Hildegard? Do you think he wanted to have a bunch of beers with her? You'd already know. Because on May of 2012, he includes her in this equivalent canonization. And October 7th of that year, he recognizes her as a doctor of the church. Quote, because of her holiness and the originality of her teaching. And I love that last point. Holiness, praise God, the sine qua non, the most important thing. But the originality of her teaching, yes, she's so baller. I mean, right? She's like, so once more, and it's been defined now, good weird. She's so like, yeah, like, let's do it this way, which is very, very interesting, very cool. All right. People say Hildegard was 8 years old when she professed vows alongside this older girl who was 6 years older, the daughter of Count Stefan II of Sponheim. Her name was Jutta, Jutta. Jutta is kind of like from what I understand, a not related, not by blood, but kind of big sister figure. Hildegard is 8, she's 14. They become, they become nuns. The vows are received by Bishop Otto of Bamberg on All Saints' Day 11/12. So according to that, right, that would put Hildegard at age 14, and Jutta would be 20 years old. So let's say that the exact chronology here is kind of hazy, but young in her life. If you consider a vocation to the priesthood, religious life, monastic life, how appropriate today's Spirit and Life tonight is on holy orders. So there you go. If you consider this kind of like, a musical vocation in some way too, she's a child prodigy, very much like Mozart, you could say, from a very early age. In fact, if I understand correctly, her parents are eager to put her in a convent, not to dispense with her, like, send her away. She apparently has these visions as a very young girl. She's very, what people would say today, in tune with the spiritual world from a very early time.
Good.
Yeah.
So she was having visions.
Yeah, apparently she was very in touch. And again, I tread lightly there. I don't want to give false information nor misleading stuff. Yeah, from what I understand, she was always very kind of like spiritually sensitive. Okay, so Jutta, from what I understand, is kind of this informal teacher to Hildegard, can only give so much because Jutta is, quote, unlearned. She has like basic rudimentary skills, but can't teach you, for instance, like the full depths of biblical interpretation. This begs the question, like Socrates asked, is wisdom, is genius a matter of learning or divine bequest? Are you born with the ability to drive a race car at 200 miles an hour? Do you learn that, right? Well, what is God-given ability? What is acquired? So Hildegard, of course, a lot of people say it's a lot of the latter. She's a lot of like just totally, God bestowed gifts. When Jutta dies in 1136, like I said again, Hildegard was elected mistress, magistra of the community by her fellow nuns, and unanimously. And this is very cool because what's the stereotype we often hear about kind of geniuses? What is the stereotype?
What is it?
Nutty professor, I don't know.
Right. No, right.
Mhm.
The aloof, nutty professor who thinks they're better than everyone. And if they don't think they're better than everyone, they're just kind of like disconnected.
Right.
Just let them go sit in the corner and play with their toys, and they're going to figure out something really cool. But they're kind of, Hildegard, like I said again, her weirdness does not manifest in interpersonal relations. Very aura et labora again. Hildegard is a woman of skyscraping intellectual abilities, but a very normal, cool person that everyone likes. I've heard from many people, like Mother Angelica once told a story, like some nun came to her and said, like, I hate this nun or something. And so Mother Angelica counseled her, well, that's the person you have to pray for. Like apparently in religious life, there's a lot of that. I'm sure in a monastery, you live with people, yeah, exactly. There's a lot of personality clash. The fact that she's elected unanimously is like, oh, wow, that's very beautiful once more, or this constant rubric of this class, that a person of such talent, it's easy, I'm going to resent her, right? Oh, she's so talented. Oh, she thinks she's so cool. I don't like her. Or, she's aloof or whatever. No, Hildegard was very kind of also down to earth. And Hildegard leads this convent for the next 43 years, this community rather. Eventually she builds, like I said, two other convents. Let me tell you one more time the names. Uh, Monasteries, Rupertsberg in 1150 and Eibingen in 1165. When she dies on September 17th, 1179, sisters claim, quote, two streams of light appeared in the skies and a cross over the room while she was dying.
Wow.
And okay, did that happen? I mean, I always am like, yeah, I believe that. I mean, I wasn't there, but like, how stupid can you be? Like, well, if I wasn't there, like, yeah, I think that sounds absolutely credible. And I don't think it's just, oh, a nice story. I think it's like, it's cool. I think it's like, here's this beautiful artist of God, this incredible woman, and maybe God just giving a wink and a nod to us, like, yeah, she's a legend. Like how I said the ultimate approval is when St. Thomas Aquinas hears from Christ, you've written well of me, Thomas. What will you have for your reward? And Aquinas famously says, nothing but you, Lord. Maybe this is God like winking at us, like, you guys think she's cool, so does all of heaven. She's legit. Um, What's interesting about the question earlier, self-taught or divine bequest, Hildegard received no traditional education in composition, nor was she trained to play any musical instruments. She says that her music came to her in her trances. This is sweet. This is super weird cool. Like, right? Hildegard, how did you come up with your music? My friends and I, we drove a bus from New York State to San Francisco, and along the way, we looked at a bunch of stars, and I don't know. I left New York, didn't know any music. By the time I got to San Francisco, I had a symphony. I don't know. Bunch of stargazing.
If she didn't play any instruments, how does anybody know? Did she write music and somebody else play it or what?
Oh yeah, no, a lot of she played music herself too. No, what I'm saying is she wasn't trained to play,
Oh, I see.
trained formally. She learned to play music. Yeah. It's kind of like, okay, I definitely, I hate the word hobby. I hate the word hobby. I think you shouldn't have hobbies, have art, do everything like, hobby just sounds like mind numbing stuff. But I guess for me, playing the piano is a hobby. I do just enjoy it just for the fun sake. I have a little bit of formal training. I took 7 years of piano when I was a kid. Does that count for serious training? No, not necessarily. My piano teacher was awesome. This woman was a very accomplished pianist. She's a professional and great. I'm saying for me, I wasn't like in a conservatory or something like that. if I became really good at piano, I mean, there'd be a little bit of self-taught there. What I'm saying is Hildegard had no training whatsoever and ends up, yeah, teaches herself to play musical instruments. Hildegard watches a bunch of YouTube videos on how to play the guitar and becomes really good at guitar. I don't off the top of my mind. No, I think that Brad hit it on the head. The thing that she's most famous for in the vein of Mozart are musical compositions, are the kind of the constructed pieces of music by which, I write out the music in a very, simplistic thing. Just here's the sheets of the music and people play those compositions. So it's her music because it's designed by her. She's the musical designer rather than the kind of the concert giver herself. She's more the maestro composer, the orchestra leader, once again, the composer, the Bach, the Haydn, the Mozart, who makes the music. But she had no education in this in the first place. She had no education. I can play some things on the piano at a very low level. I understand that. I have no idea. I can't even read music anymore. How are you not trained in music and compose music? And then, but in my trances. I mean, this is super, super cool.
Listen to you right now.
I mean, there you go. Maybe that's it. I mean, just incredible. Okay. Let's talk about why and what she did was beautiful. I mean, we've been doing that the whole time. Let's talk about some of her works. First thing I want to talk about is Scivias. 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 Scivias is Hildegard's first kind of major visionary work. And it's a contraction, kind of combination of words of Scivias Domine, know the ways of the Lord. Scivias means like it's a book entitled Know the Ways of the Lord. This is the book that she says she received by divine inspiration. Write down what you see in here. Divine vision telling her, the voice of God telling her to go and do this. What's very cool is our patron here at Augustine's, right? He famously talks about tolle lege. St. Augustine, right? Take and read. That leads to his conversion. Pick up and read. It's a very similar kind of tolle lege type thing. Write down what you see in here. So she begins to record and interpret her visionary experiences. In total, 26 were captured in this compilation. Scivias is broken down into 3 parts. The first part, 6 visions, chronicle the order of God's creation. That is so baller. And it's seriously so cool. She had visions, guys. She had visions that explain how everything works. She had visions that are translated into a book, musically and mathematically. She's a legend. This woman is so, so cool. Oh, P.S. I forgot to mention she's my aunt also. I just want to put that in there. She's my aunt. So there's a little bit of family pride for you.
Music leads to things nowadays, leads to things like computer science or engineering or engineering. And from there, the medical doctor. And I had a doctor who had done just exactly that. But that's not uncommon.
Yeah, of course. Number one lesson of Hildegard, Brad had a great point about musical inclinations leading to people vocation in the medical field. I mean, yeah. And this is the grandeur of God, I think. Is God good at music? Is God good at sports? These are purposely ridiculous questions. Like, God is the only non-contingent being in whom all perfections are at rest and exist perfectly, and he's perfect at everything. And so to imitate God is to be good often at multiple things by the grace of God, despite the fact that you can never ever achieve a level of perfection. But so Hildegard and her polymathematics, being a philosopher, designer, visionary, theologian, in some ways, we talked already about her forays into medical theory of that time, no matter how rudimentary, is nothing more than a participation in a man fully alive, like the person fully alive making the most of their talents. First part chronicles the order of God's creation, things like the creation and fall of Adam and Eve, structure of the universe. Imagine selling that to someone today. So it's so cool, so grand. So what are you doing your PhD on? I'm doing it on the structure of the universe. Well, what are your sources? I'm going to be in a trance a bunch of times and it'll come to me. And that's awesome. This is so, it is so good. We're all laughing here and it's kind of mirthful. That's funny. It's funny in a very beautiful way. It's cool. It's so super cool. This is so strange, so rare that you have a person like this who's actually serious and a true genius and not just some person making up stories, whatever. Like the proof is in the pudding of the work that she constructed. Anyone can just go down to the street corner and say, oh yeah, I have these trances and mystical visions. Well, okay, well, tell us some wisdom. Don't worry about it or whatever, right? I mean, like she actually produces the fruit of what she claims is transpiring within her. Second part describes the order of redemption, the coming of Christ the Redeemer, the Trinity, the Church is the bride of Christ, the mother of the faithful in baptism and confirmation, the orders of the Church, talks about Christ's work on Calvary, the Eucharist, fight against the devil. Final, third part, recapitulates the history of salvation told in two parts. It concludes with the Symphony of Heaven, an earlier version of Hildegard's musical compositions. Hildegard of Bingen Scivias is a theory of everything plus divine comedy. Divine Comedy was written in the year 1308, 1321. So 100 some years before Divine Comedy, Hildegard of Bingen out Dante's Dante. Her next work, Liber Divinorum Operum, the Book of Divine Works, becomes an extended explication, a kind of exegesis, a focus on the Gospel of John, which is called the second Genesis. In the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God. That prologue, that opening part, chapter 1 of St. John's Gospel, right? Word is more beautifully translated, more correctly from the Greek logos, which is a word that has like 5,000 definitions. Logos means logic, reason, rationality, God himself. Christ is the incarnate logos, the incarnate eternal wisdom. Hildegard, in her book, establishes the relationship by grand allegorical female figures of caritas y sapientia, divine love and wisdom. Like Hildegard is like inventing characters to tell a story to personify ethereal, transcendental virtues like divine love. And this is a book. This is again a book. Liber,
What is it called?
the Book of Divine Works.
Okay.
So the first is the Dante theory of everything divine comedy is know the ways of the Lord. The second one is the Book of Divine Works.
Okay.
And our third work, the third book now, the Order of the Virtues, Ordo Virtutum, is an allegorical morality play. It's one of the earliest morality plays. Some will say the first morality play that we have. Kind of in extant in the extant record is, quote, the earliest morality play by more than a century, and the only medieval musical drama to survive with an attribution from both text and music. So 3 books by Hildegard, Scivias, Liber Divinorum Operum, and Ordo Virtutum, the English titles being Know the Ways of the Lord, the Book of Divine Works, and the Order of the Virtues. Let's talk about her music, right? The music is what she's most famous for better or for worse. And obviously even for better. What I'm saying is, like, if Hildegard was like, oh man, I want it to be known for my medicine or my philosophy, I mean, music is what she's known for. Hildegard's contribution to the world of music is monumental, but hilariously, right? Hilariously, it's not discovered until very, very recent. In 1979, Philip Pickett and the New London Consort performed 4 of her songs in honor of the, wait for it, 800th anniversary of her death, 800th year anniversary of her death. So it begs the question, like, the late onset, posthumous onset of fame. For some people, it happens very fast. Who am I thinking of? Who became incredibly famous immediately after their death? An artist, a recent artist, but was not famous during his lifetime. A guy who cut off his ear. Right. Van Gogh couldn't give away his paintings. He dies. May God have mercy, God rest his soul. He becomes super famous pretty quickly. Van Gogh paintings sell for hundreds of millions of dollars. Hildegard goes full Van Gogh after 800 years of laying dormant like Mount St. Helens, which, by the way, is now going to be renamed Mount St. Hildegard, because I said so, guys. If I ever had any authority, I'm going to rename Mount St. Helens Mount St. Hildegard. Oh, really? How was it? Grace Martin is an amazing piano player, yeah.
She's gonna have another thing, a side or something coming.
Cool. Anyone listening online who follows this channel, Grace Martin, piano, another one coming up when? In February, you said? Good, yeah, look for that. Grace Martin, yeah, I agree. Phenomenal piano player. I've heard her play piano like probably 17 real seconds, like in that room. And it was just, you could see, you know it when you see it, like real talent. I mean, just from like 1 second. She's a great piano player.
Where was this?
So, well,
On campus, right?
Yeah, where's it?
They had, right, I don't, where,
Oh, okay.
some of them can't.
All right.
There are no mentions of any of her music in a reference book before the 1970s. She has more musical compositions from the Middle Ages than any other composer. You can't find a single entry of hers. It's amazing. Again, this begs the question, how beautiful is it, as our Lord says in prayer, pray with a closed door and the Heavenly Father will reward you. How about with work too? Work even in total obscurity and anonymity, and God will reward you in his own time. In fact, one of my favorite Bible verses from the book of Sirach, 51:30, I think is the verse, right at the end. And it's one of these deuterocanonical books that Catholics have and Protestants do not include in their canon. From the book of Sirach, it says, work in due time, work at your tasks in due time or due season, and that in his time, God will provide the reward. I'm heavily paraphrasing. That's the gist of it. Like, just do your work now, and when God's ready to reward you, he will. Hildegard, 800 years after she dies. Imagine Hildegard chilling in heaven. And of course, I'm being highly facetious and sarcastic here, but because eye is not seen, ear is not heard. So I have nothing to say about heaven other than eye is not seen, ear is not heard. Wow. Imagine though, in this kind of funny side note, she's up in heaven. She's like, I'm just going to check back down on earth. She checks back down 600 years after she died. And there's no mention of her. She's probably like, yeah, I guess people are never going to know about my earthly work. It's probably pretty safe to say after 600 years of me being dead, people, right? No, this guy, Philip Pickett, performs 4 songs. She becomes an international sensation, insanely famous, maybe considered the medieval composer. It's incredible. So who is that next person? Begs the question to be discovered like that. Who's going to be discovered in 20 years, right? Who we never even knew existed, and becomes the most important, whatever architect or something. I encourage you to look up A Feather on the Breath of God. Go find later Hildegard of Bingen, A Feather on the Breath of God. This album of sacred music, once more written in the 12th century, of course, her whole life was in the 12th century. Hyperion Records released this in 1982, so you can find a very kind of contemporary. 1982, yeah, okay, that's been what, 42 years now. No, that is very contemporary. It's not like I'm not asking you to find some, 1899, even were there even recordings then, kind of thing. This is a very, very, very modern, very kind of professional, performance. Done with, I have no idea who this is. Both of these things. I don't know what the British Vocal Ensemble Gothic Voices is, but I'm sure incredible medieval singers in that style, right? The kind of plain chant, sacred music style. And the English soprano, Emma Kirkby. I have no idea who Emma Kirkby is. I'm sorry, Miss Kirkby. Emma Kirkby follows this channel. I should know who she is. She's a huge fan of maple syrup history. I'm sure Emma Kirkby is an incredible singer, obviously, duh, right? Do you think Hyperion Records, this super important record label, hey, we need to make Hildegard of Bingen. We need to put her out there. Let's get a singer who's not good. Obviously not. Emma Kirkby is probably the A++++ voice quality. The English soprano Emma Kirkby. So look for that. A Feather on the Breath of God. Final point about Hildegard. Abigail Favali. She is this professor, Catholic. See, she's relatively famous, kind of in the Catholic. I don't want to say Catholic social media again. She's a professional academic, but Abigail Favali, writes articles. She's a professor by trade, but writes articles, appears on like Catholic podcasts, whatever. Very cool article. Abigail Favali from Church Life Journal, nd.edu, notredame.edu. I think perhaps Favali is associated with Notre Dame. She's a professor there or something. I don't want to, again, give false information exactly. Let me actually put that right now. Abigail Favali. So we'll be finishing kind of with her thoughts on Hildegard. Abigail Favali is an associate professor of English at George Fox University, okay, where she teaches in the William Penn Honors Program, but she's listed here at the University of Notre Dame McGrath Institute for Church Life as professor of the practice Women's Studies. Okay, so she has some affiliation with Notre Dame and George Fox. Wrote a very, very good article, quote, called Hildegard of Bingen's Vital Contribution to the Concept of Woman. All right. Hildegard is the first thinker to clearly articulate a third alternative between unity and polarity in the 12th century. Her theology is intensely incarnational. The material world is imbued with sacred significance and sacramental meaning. Hildegard's theology, Abigail Favali says, remember, all kind of not quoting from article, but this is Abigail Favali's argument. Hildegard's theology says that both man and woman carry the imago Dei, the image of God. She even talks to us about in regards to sex. Medieval sexual attitudes have been, lampooned forever, stupidly. Epic fail on the person trying to make the joke. Oh, right, the medieval people were so prudish. It's like that's so dumb. People have always been the same. Whether it's living sexual chastity, falling into lust, like human beings never change. So the idea that medieval people somehow were different than us is just so dumb. They didn't have the kind of access to all the kind of garbage on TV and whatever and that kind of stuff. But otherwise, people never change. In the medieval time period, if you want to take the argument like women were second-class citizens, which again, I don't want to get into all that right now because so much that depends upon time and place, whatever. But Favali is kind of arguing that Hildegard is what I am calling perhaps this awesome ideal of a quote Christian feminist. Hildegard is not a 1960 I hate men type feminist. It's not that. She's not, anti-man. This is not that kind of thing. Hildegard is completely obedient, right, in her vows, in her monastic vows, and obedient to God above all. But she says, enough with this idea that, like, okay, in sex, the man matters and his seed and the woman is just this like vessel. It's kind of like, she's like, no, right? Favali says, Hildegard provides a detailed account of human reproduction in which man provides the seed and the woman's body warms and livens it, strengthening it and readying for the implantation of the soul by God. Because it is God alone who creates the soul, and man and woman's role in generation is equal and active. There's an equal dignity, which is very cool. So Hildegard she writes the Divine Comedy before Divine Comedy. She writes Theology of the Body 700 years before John Paul II. I mean, have I convinced you yet how cool this woman was? So she says, men and women are equal. They're distinct. They have different roles in sexual reproduction. Duh. Does anyone need a basic course in that? Obviously, a basic birds and the bees talk. Of course, the roles are different, but she's saying, no, it's not that the woman somehow is less or whatever, like the man is. No, they're equally important because ultimately God alone is the author of life. So man and woman in their complementarity, it's actually a very beautiful Christian vision. It's neither the kind of like, women are nothing, women should shut up and just obey their husbands, women are less, nor is it the opposite, men are bad, kill all men. Like it's men, women are complementary and equal. They both play an important role. And she says, her kind of motto with this is opus alterum per alterum. Opus alterum per alterum. Man and women are each the work of the other. So like man and women are the lock and the key. They fit together. Men and women are supposed to be, for lack of a better word, friends, good friends. They're supposed to be complementary parts. The whole lesson of the fall is that men hate women, women hate men. Their relations are dominated by lust and, and mistrust and whatever. Randy Travis is a cool song. I'm gonna love you forever and ever, amen. Where he's like, you know that song?
That's a great song.
Yeah, as long as old men sit around talking about the weather, as long as old women sit around talking about old men. That's a good line.
That's a great.
Yeah, it's a good song. Men and women are supposed to be complementary parts. All right, Hildegard of Bingen, you crushed. Hildegard, done. Hildegard in the club, Hildegard out. What are some important points? Remember the circle points in the back.
But wait.
Go for it.
How did Philip Pickett find this music? How was it rediscovered?
Absolutely none of your business.
Okay.
How did Phil? It's so nice to laugh together, isn't it?
Yeah.
I have no idea. Yeah,
Wow.
I have no idea. And you're indeed right. I think that's something that's worth following up upon.
Like, was there some chest that?
Sure,
somebody
because
opened?
you're right.
Like,
Because check it out. No, this is so Barb asked.
Yeah.
Yeah, Barb asked a really brilliant, sincerely brilliant question. How did Philip Pickett, the guy who brings her music, Hildegard's music to the popular consciousness, find it in the first place? And the answer I'm tempted to give is, oh, he went to some reference book. No, we just talked about there is no reference of her. How do you look up a non-existent person? Right, exactly. So it's like, yeah, I mean, I don't know. That is something I'd like to follow up upon.
Yeah.
Try to remind me. Obviously in the course of lecture, I have a limited amount of time to prepare stuff, and there's tons of holes in kind of the backstory. That is something that I actually wish. There's often things that someone asks me a question like, I don't care what the answer is, right? This is actually, I'm curious myself too. I don't know how it came across his attention. I would assume like even when someone's totally unknown, someone knows about them, right? The fact they're not in reference books, she might be in the Benedictine records, the German abbey where that lineage in Central Europe and kind of stuff. So someone obviously knows about her.
Where is Phil picked it from?
London, UK.
Somebody looking around for something completely different, a card catalog. Stunning.
Orange catalog.
Yeah.
Well, back in 1979.
Who knows? I mean, yeah, they'll use like, or a version of that. I mean, yeah, you just kind of just happy. You and I were talking about, this is hilarious. Brad King and I were talking about this class. He was looking for a certain book and came across another book. I mean, that maybe that's the story. He was looking on abebooks.com and found something else, right? Okay, here's the 5 points for Hildegard. You ready? Is everyone ready? I want to have like a horn sound. Is everyone ready? Ba, 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 bum. I'm going to add a horn sound to this video, a horn sound. So ready on, I have my finger up. Is everyone ready for the 5 points? I'm going to like freeze, right? I'm going to do it again. I'm going to do it again and freeze myself. And then when I do this, I'm going to have a horn sound. And I'm going to include that in all my videos from now. It's be sweet, right? I have a new opening to maple syrup history. You know what it sounds like? Car traffic. That's my opening. I'm dead serious. Concrete Jungle is the name of the iMovie app. So, anyone want to know the 5 important points? Freeze? Okay, here they are. Number 1, a pre-fall Genesis complementary man-woman relation. Hildegard, why is her work beautiful? Number 1, she argues for a pre-fall, kind of men and women are supposed to be friends, not rivals. 2, following 1, a true concept of kind of female excellence, you could say. Hildegard is a hero for young girls, for everyone. But if I had like a daughter, I do not have a daughter. If I had like a 15-year-old daughter who is like, Dad, what's a woman I can look up to? I mean, Hildegard's a great woman to look up to. Hildegard's message is not, hey, women should just shut up and obey men. Not at all. It's also not women should hate men. It's you can go and make the most of your abilities, become a composer, scientist, whatever, and kind of have it all while also being faithful to God. Hildegard's a great example of kind of female excellence, I would say. She's not against God or men. She's for God and fully devout in her kind of monastic vows, but very, very much letting her genius flow unimpeded. So much so, Hildegard allowed her nuns to wear flowers in their hair because they wanted to. Other people, right? No, how dare you, right? It's 1140. You gotta be, you can't even show your hair. Hildegard's like, let's put flowers in her hair. She's the original flower child. She let her nuns do flower in her hair and they listened to Janis Joplin on the weekends. So it's like, and they, yeah. Number 1, pre-fall complementariness. Number 2, a true concept of female excellence, a woman who can honestly have it all, who is not a rebel, who's faithful to God and kind of like her duties, but is absolutely her own person, superstar, the kind of full true independence that seems to be so sought after in postmodern society. Number 3, Matthew 25, make the most of your talents. Yeah, scientist, composer, etc. Number 4, the unseen gifts of God. That's really beautiful. If a tree falls in the forest and no one's there to hear it, does it make a sound? Of course it does. God hears it. Work, just because she labored and no one knew her work for 800 years, well, it was finally discovered in God's good time. And that's point number 5 too. Ponder that idea of the eternal deposit of just doing work only for God, kind of working off point number 4, and then letting God in his proper time, Sirach 51:3, 51:10, display that. That is all I have for you. Everyone listening online, I cannot thank you enough for your support. If any of you know like really world important leaders, like presidents, tell them to follow the channel. I'm looking for more presidents. I'm looking for more presidents and prime ministers to follow the channel. Everyone knows people like that. Tell them. Otherwise, I wish you a really good day. Our next week, I'm just thinking off the top of my head now. I think our next 2 lectures it's going to be every Monday and Wednesday. Today was exceptional because today is the first day UI starts. Monday, I believe, is on, what is it? Saint Sebastian. And Wednesday is on Antonio Gaudí and architecture, the architect of Sagrada Familia. Take care, everyone. See ya.